Many people get stuck with their Mandarin learning for a reason that's overlooked by the majority of us. They get overwhelmed. In this video, I'm going to be sharing the 4 different types of overwhelm that I and my students have encountered, and how overcoming these actually led me to go on Chinese TV in front of 1.4 billion people doing a news report entirely in Mandarin. I'll show you a clip of that at the end, by the way, but before I do that, let's get started and dive into these 4 different types of overwhelm. Number 1. So many students come to me like, Will, I'm using Pleco, Anki, Scritter, using the bit of the HSK textbook. I'm watching some YouTube videos here and then, and I'm also doing a load of podcasts as well. But I don't know why, I'm just not making any progress. Like, what should I do? And you know what the problem is here, guys? The problem is type number 1 of overwhelm, which I call resource overwhelm. You know, there's so much stuff on the internet nowadays, and there's so many different ways we could be learning Mandarin, that most of us, and I've been guilty of this myself, rather than making our routine simpler, we make it more complicated. We try and get everything. We want a bit of everything. But what's the solution here? If you want to stop feeling overwhelmed and make real progress, I encourage you to cut down on your resources. I would recommend actually only having 1 or 2 resources for each of the skills that you're practicing training. For listening, you could have podcasts. For reading, you could have graded readers. For speaking practice, you could have language exchange. And for retention, you could have Anki. And that would be it. You would have nothing else. You would just use those. So for me personally, what I use for these, I don't want to be a hypocrite here. I've got to be actually, doing what I'm saying here on camera. So for listening, for me, I listen to podcasts. That's what I do. I try and do that every day. For reading, I read crime novels on Fantia, which is like a Chinese novel app. For retention, I use Anki. That's my whole Mandarin learning routine at the moment. So I want to really encourage you to have a think, are you using too many resources? And just cut down to 1, maximum 2 resources for each of the skills that you're trying to train, as I said earlier. Because here's the takeaway message here, guys. The simpler your routine is, the easier it is to stick to long term. And only if you can stick at this for the long term can you get good results and can you actually make significant progress. And if you want to go a bit deeper with this idea of making habits, building a language learning routine, you can go and check out the link in the description for a bit more on that. Okay, so now we're going to be moving on to the second type of overwhelm, which I think nearly everyone is guilty of. So let me start by asking you this. If you were preparing for an exam and you didn't have much time to do so, would you try and cram in absolutely everything, try and learn everything in the entire textbook, let's say, for that specific exam? Or would you focus all your time on just learning the key things that you know are nearly 100% sure going to come up? And I don't mean to be a bit arrogant here, right? But as a medical student, I'm pretty good at exams. That's what we're trained to be good at. And what I would say is, in my opinion, the second approach would win every single time. It's so much better to focus on the high yield stuff to get the results. And in Mandarin, I found there's actually a really similar pattern. Now, everyone on the internet talks about the 80-20 rule, that 20% of the language will account for 80% of the conversation. I think that's right, but I think there's a caveat here and something a little bit deeper, and that is the 20% for you is probably different to my 20%. So what I want to encourage you to do is to prioritize what you're learning, prioritize the new chunks, phrases, vocab, everything that you're learning around you and make it personalized to you. So you're going to only learn the things that you think are really useful and you're actually going to use in conversation. What I would recommend that you don't do is learn, random words on word lists because someone's told you to do so, or because you feel that you need to in order to achieve a certain level of Mandarin. What I'd actually recommend you do is you start from input, you start from listening and reading, and you purposely prioritize what you're going to learn. As you're going through, something that you're reading or something that you're listening to, you pick out intentionally the things that you want to learn because you're going to be using them in conversation. And that way you'll not only remember things better, but you also feel so much less overwhelmed. As I completely understand that feeling as an intermediate Mandarin learner, you're like, oh my days, there is so much stuff to learn. It's crazy. There seems to be an endless amount of new vocabulary, an endless amount of new sentence structures and patterns and things to learn. But what you actually need to learn to do is prioritize what actually matters to you. number 3, I don't know about you, but I've always felt like really uncomfortable when I see these numbers being thrown around in the language learning community, like, oh, I spend like X thousand amount of hours on learning whatever language, or like it's going to take thousands and thousands of hours in order to learn Mandarin, for example. And it made me feel really overwhelmed. I was like, oh man, am I ever going to really be able to hit those numbers and ever be able to, you know, get good at Mandarin, as everyone says that's the case? So you end up going into this mindset where you're kind of like, oh, well, I can only put in, I don't know, half an hour a day, 1 hour a day. Like, I'm never going to be able to get there. Like, unless I can put in 8 hours a day, I'm never going to hit those huge numbers that are being thrown around. And it leads you into this kind of what I call all or nothing overwhelm. You think that learning Mandarin is a game of like all or nothing. Like, only if you can go all in and spend all your time on learning Mandarin will you ever make any progress. And let me tell you this, that's a lie. Like, you do not have to be able to put in hours and hours and hours a day to make progress. Like, you can absolutely make progress with 1 or 2 hours a day. I genuinely believe that. And I've seen people do it as well. So I kind of look back when I was a busy medical student, I saw these numbers and I was like, man, I'm never going to be able to hit them. You know, like I study half an hour of Anki a day. I watch a little bit of TV at night in Mandarin, occasionally have some chats with friends when I can, and listen to podcasts as I go along, like go out throughout my day. But what I didn't realize was that's enough. Like, that is going to get you the results. So what I would recommend is that you really need to do is you just need to have a little bit of dedicated study time a day, like I did when I was in medical school. Let's say half an hour a day. Fit things in and around your life when you can, like listening as much as you can, and those hours really, really rack up without you even noticing. And then have dedicated conversation practice time, and you'll go much further than you really think. You do not have to be putting 8 hours in a day. So the 4th type of overwhelm I want to talk about with you guys today in this video is what I call method overwhelm. You're looking and searching for the perfect method of learning Mandarin, and you feel overwhelmed unless you found that method that's so optimal and so perfect. Oh, pardon me. Oh, maybe my dinner wasn't optimal. So you're trying to look for this perfect method that's going to get you the results, and you think only if you have that perfect method will you be able to learn Mandarin, and then you feel overwhelmed as a result of it. And again, I've been down that rabbit hole of when you look on YouTube and you look on Reddit on this frantic hunt for this thing that's going to solve all your problems, this method that should be out there, this magical method that's just going to make everything click. And let me tell you this, guys, there is no perfect method. I hate to break it to you, but that's the case it is. So I kind of want to get you out of this method overwhelmed mindset. But because I want to help you guys, like I want to give you some general guidance on, in general, what I've seen to work for myself, for people that I've interviewed on this channel, and also for my students, because I run a 50-day speaking program where I help intermediate students go from freezing up and, you know, struggling with conversations, reverting back to English, to speaking Mandarin more confidently and naturally in conversation. If you're interested in that at all, I've also left a link in the description in case that's something that interests you. So my general guidance is to focus on chunks, you know, focus on the sentence patterns and the short phrases that you can use as building blocks for sentences to make everything stick together. Let me put it to you like this. If you were trying to build a Lego house as quickly as you could, I know that's a really weird challenge to have in your head, but imagine it for a second. Would you use, like, I don't know, if you guys had Lego as a kid? Like when I was younger, I really used to be a little bit obsessed with Lego, and I remember these like one piece Legos that like kind of like only had, I don't know how to describe it, but they were tiny, like really small. But then also you could get these really like long bits, like let's say this long of Lego, or these like larger blocks. So if you were trying to build a Lego house as quickly as possible, which do you think would be the best choice? Like, obviously the big blocks, right? If you try and put together these tiny like one piece Lego bricks, that's going to take you absolutely ages. But with the bigger blocks, it will definitely make it a lot faster, as one block could be the equivalent to, I don't know, like 20 of these little ones, right? And that's the way I like to think about teaching in chunks. So when you start to learn Mandarin in chunks, you're like putting sentences together in your head becomes so much easier, because it's a case of you have this pattern, this fixed template in your head that's like one of those big blocks that's already made up most of the sentence for you, and you just have to plug in the things that you need to put in order to express different ideas. So I would definitely look into that if you're interested, and I talk about that a lot on this channel. So the second little bit of general guidance I'd like to give you here is you can divide your time very roughly into 3 different sections, okay? And they are input, output, and deliberate practice. Now I know I mentioned this a little bit earlier when I was talking about, the different skills, and these are what I tend to consider. So input, output, deliberate practice. And you just divide your time up as best as you can with these. So you want to be spending your time so that you have, a decent amount of input, a decent amount of listening and reading, a decent amount of output, so practicing speaking or, writing a diary, for example, and then a bit of deliberate practice as well. And for deliberate practice, I specifically recommend 2 things. The first of which is pronunciation training, which is really, really important for Mandarin in order to get the tones right and get your rhythm right. And the second part is using Anki to actually retain what you learn. And again, I've spoken about them a bit more in other videos, so I won't go into too much detail here. So let me just give you my real life example. Going back to my routine, how do I divide up my time between input, output, and deliberate practice? So this is what I do. For input, I listen to podcasts and I read my Chinese crime novels. For output, I do language exchange with my girlfriend. And for deliberate practice, I do Anki every day for like 20-30 minutes. And in the past, I used to do a lot of shadowing of native content as well and practicing pronunciation, etc. But I do that a bit less nowadays. So that's my routine. And as you've probably realized, it really doesn't have to be that complicated. Like, you just do those, you divide your time up between those 3 activities and you'll go really, really far without even realizing it. And it won't lead you to be overwhelmed. So now, as I promised you guys, we're going to have a quick look at my dragon boat racing video here. Now, this is going to be a bit embarrassing, so bear with me.
今天我又带大家体验一下在曼城过端午节是什么样的。好，那我们开始吧。大家可以看到河边有很多人，那他们到底在观看什么呀？当然是观看必不可少的龙舟比赛。
So guys, if you want to speak Mandarin more confidently and more naturally, apart from checking the links down in the description below, I'd highly recommend that you check out this video next.